Testing? Okay, the mic works. Gonna have Discord to the right. Can you hear me? Perfect. What time is it? Oh wait, this is not long. Let's go back to the start. Let me get my phone. Oh, that's kind of hot. It's still 4:58. Still have like 2 minutes. I might start later than 5. I guess we'll see. I'm gonna open Discord just in case. And I'll be ready. Oh yeah, true. Whoa. Wait, can you join the mood channel, Gustavo? I want to see if I can hear you. I'll also broadcast it. Can you hear me? Can you hear yourself? Oh, sweet. I guess I can just stay in the chat. In this voice chat. Where is this Isao? Is the keyboard kind of loud, by the way? I'm going to, I guess, start in like 3 more minutes or 4? Starts at 5. Can I change this? Oh, let's just change this. Let's just do like 5. 5:05. Perfecto. Oh wait, I have the date wrong. Dude, it's not September. What's the date? The 23rd? October. Present. You can still hear me, right? And oh, okay, I see. Perfect. Light open. Yes. Oops, sorry. It is, I guess, 2 more minutes, and I will just start. I'm gonna leave voice chat. Where is John? I miss you, man. Oh, he's away. All right, so it's 5:04. I'll just start in 1 minute. It's being recorded anyways. Whoops. Let's go back to the beginning. I got my pumpkin latte. Oops. I'm basically a white girl. All right. This time. Should I just start? Let me ask Gustavo. I have like 2 screens and like 4 different windows open at the same time. It is crazy. Crazy. All right, well, I guess I'm going to start. This is being recorded anyways. Let me mute my phone. All right, so hello. Welcome to Moby. This is our Moby workshop. I think it's been 4 weeks since the last one. Gustavo did that one. So what is Moby? Well, Moby is a software development organization here at UTA. We work front end, back end, and mobile development. And if you have any questions with any of these and you want to get interested, like want to start working on anything, just feel free to message us and we can help you out with anything. So to talk to us, you can go to our Discord. We're active there. So like if you want to message an officer, just go for it. We're always open. And then for some other members here at Moby, we've gone to work at Capital One, State Farm, Amazon, and Facebook. And this is Milo. He is the Moby mascot. And then for membership, let's talk about membership. So membership is free to be a Moby. You don't have to pay anything. If you want to be a member, you just show up to our weekly events or workshops and you're a member. It's as simple as that. Now for our events, we have social coding where we just like get on a call and just talk about coding or anything really, or even play games. We also have what do we have? We have wait, hold up, my screen's kind of glitchy. We also meet up for lead coding. So that was done originally at Saturday, but everyone's been too busy, so we're changing it to Tuesday night. And we're not sure about the time, but we'll let you know when we have a time. And then Hack Texas, that's this weekend. It starts, I think, at 10 p.m. I'm not really sure, I'm not going, but online it says that the ceremonies start today at 10 p.m. I don't know if that means the actual hackathon starts at 10. I don't know. If anyone knows, please let us know. So if you're also looking for a team or have any questions, feel free to go to our hackathon channel on our Discord and just message anyone. And now for our workshop, I'll be going over JavaScript. So let me open up the VS Code. Let me close this. Data types. All right, I am going to do live coding for the most part of it. And let's begin. So I'm going over JavaScript. It is one of the most important programming languages, mainly because it's the language of the web browser, right? The beauty of JavaScript is that you can get a lot done with just knowing a little bit about the language, and it's very expressive. Like the more you learn about it, the more powerful it gets. So let's just start with the basics type of creating variables. Unlike, let's say, Java or C, you don't have types, right? You don't have like an integer or string or characters. You just have these three. You have a variable, a let, and a const. So if you program with JavaScript back then or in the past, you probably used var. That is the old way of creating a variable. And the more modern approach would be using let. So we let an alien, which is the variable name, and then we make it equal to anything. So here we're doing a string, or we can do a number. All right, this is the modern approach. And then we also have constant variables now, which these are variables that do not change once they're created. It is good practice to use let and const. So if you can, try not to use var, use the new ones, let and const. Now for printing, I'm going to be using this plugin to print on screen. So if you want to print, you want to use the console. That's where everything gets printed to, and you want to log it, right? Not that one. So let's say we want to print the human variable, we would just print it, and it would return Daisy on screen. Or if we wanted to do, let's say, alien, we can do that. Or if we wanted to do the string alien, we can just do that. And another cool thing that I love to do is printing multiple things, just like this, separated with commas, and it will print it. Let me open this on the side. It will print it with spaces in between each variable. And for JavaScript, there are 7 main types. We have numbers, we have strings, we have booleans, which can be true or false. We have nothing, 1 equals null. So nulls are, it represents that there is nothing there, right? It's different to undefined. So undefined is the variable was declared, but it was never assigned. So that's the same as doing this. This is undefined. And then there's another new type in JavaScript. It is the simple type. I don't know much about this because it's fairly new, but I guess we'll see more of it as time goes on. So besides these types, everything else that you see in JavaScript is a object. Object, right? Okay, let's go into strings for now. So in JavaScript, we have strings. We can initialize a basic string by doing let, and then naming it, say, let's call it a greeting. And then we do the simple quotation marks, right, with greeting. Or let's do hello. And there you have it. You have a string JavaScript. Now, if you want to print it to the console, we would just do like this, and you have the string. Now, to modify the string, you can just get greeting, and then I guess, let's say we want to add something to the end of it, append. So we can do plus equal. So we add, let's say, world, and that would add to the end. Or if we wanted to modify the string, we could just make it equal to something else, something. Right. This is, I'll be going over arrays next. So let's go to arrays. I'm quickly going to go over this because I have a lot to cover. Now for arrays, they are kind of the same way as you see it in Java or C. So you have brackets and then the values. So here we have temp reading equals a bunch of integers or numbers, I mean, and then we have another array. So for JavaScript, you don't have to initialize it with a size. So you can make an array, an empty array, and then just continue adding onto it. It's going to grow. So if you want to add an element, let's, I guess, add to temp readings. Let's add a single variable, temp readings dot push. So we want to push something to the end of it, and we can add, I guess, the number 2. And as you see, number 2 gets added. Now, what if we wanted to add this array onto this other array, right? So we want to add 2 arrays together. So we want to do temp reading dot push, and then let's do the new array, temp readings. So it's not really doing what we want. So we see the first arrays from 78 to 65. We see the 2 that was added, and then we see an array was added. Well, maybe you would want that sometimes, but right now we don't. We want the values. So one thing we could do is we can use the spread operator to spread what's inside the brackets into the new array. So we're spreading the contents 45, 34, 36, and we're pushing each one into temp reading. So that is done with the dot notation 3 times. So dot 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 is a spreading operator on this array. So now we have this result. Now onto objects. So objects, they're very big in JavaScript because everything is basically an object. Let me open up this. Okay. Object, and they are defined by a curly brace. So you have an empty curly brace and that defines an empty object. So there's nothing in it. If you want to add something to an object, you will do it like this. So let's make a new object. Press enter to make it multi-line. And for this, you're going to give it a key. Then you're going to do colon, and then you're going to give it a value. So for this, we're just going to give it the value of a string, which contains value. These are objects. They are pairs, and there are multiple of them. So you can add on to this. So you would do a comma, and then you add, say, let's add a name, and then let's make it equal to a string that's my name. So keys can be anything really. Like you can do an integer, or I mean a number, and that would be valid. You could also make it a string of name, and that's also valid. And then for the values, that can also be anything. So here we have a string, we can do a number, or we can do another object, right? And that's what we see down here. We have a customer which has a name with a value, Bob, age with the value of 59, and then we have this key profile image which has the value of an object. And in that object, we have a key image with the value bob.svg, which is a string. So what we want to do is how do we like get these values, right? One thing we could do is I'm just going to print it. So customer, if we print customer, it's going to print all the contents in there, right? So we see name Bob, age, profile image. But what if we wanted to get just age? Well, we can do customer, and then we would do dot, and then the thing we want to get. So I want to get the key H. That will return, oh, that doesn't return that. Let me copy paste this. And then start that. Oh, I think it's because of this actually. There we go. So doing it by itself prints everything in the object, and by labeling the keys, so saying customer dot key name. So we have age that returns the value of 59. Another way to do this is we can copy it. So .customer, our object, and then we can index it kind of like an array and provide a string. In this string, we are going to enter the name of the key we want to get. So let's say I want to get the name. Name is going to be Bob. So customer name is going to return the value Bob, and we're going to print it. So if we change this to a string, it's still going to work the same way, like I said. And then another way, if let's say like we wanted to get this nested object, we would have to, let me copy this. We have to click select customer, then we want to select the key profile image. And then in there, there's another object. So we want to select the key image. And in there, we return Bob SVG, which is the string, the value of this. This is how you get nested objects. So objects in objects. I think someone messaging. Nope. Let me check something. Okay, I see Diego. What's up, Diego? All right, so this is how you get values. Now, how do you update values? Well, you can call them. So customer dot, let's say we want to change age, right? We can just get that variable and make it equal to something else. So let's do 60. And as you see, age went from 59 to 60. And if you want to increment it, you can also do it like treat it as like it's a variable. So you can do plus equal and add 1 to it, or you can do customer.age plus plus like you would in Java if it was a variable. So now we have 62. Now adding new keys to an object, let's say you have customer and you wanted to give this customer Bob a last name, I guess. So if we wanted to do that, we can just write it down. So customer dot, what do we want to call this? Last name. And we want to make that equal to, let's say, Bob Smith. And in JavaScript, that's going to create like you're creating a new key right here. So it's like you're adding last name and then giving it a value, kind of like a variable. So you see here, you see last name is appended to the end. Its key is last name and the value is Smith. Now, if you want to copy variables, so say this customer right here, you want to copy it to a new variable, you can do the spread operator, which I brought up a while ago for arrays. So you would do, you want to spread with 3 dots, and then you would like to spread the customer object, right? So new customer now is a copy of customer. So you see Bob, age, profile, like all the things that Bob has. But let's say we want to overwrite, I guess, the name. Let's make this Joe. So we would just select the key and then overwrite it. So what happens here is that we copy everything in the customer object, and then we're overriding anything that starts with name. So if name exists, it's going to be overridden. Is there any questions, by the way? I've been going a little too fast. Good. Well, if you do have a question, just put it in chat. I'm pretty sure an officer can answer that if they see it. You good? All right. Thank you, Diego. And let's go on to referencing. So referencing can lead to a lot of bugs if you don't pay attention to it. Let me press enter here a lot. So let's start with 2 variables. We have switch A, which is equal to the string on, and then we have switch B, which equals the same value as switch A. So when we print it, both are equal to on, right? So they're both referencing this value. What happens, let's say if we switch B, what if we modify switch B and make that one equal to off? Well, what we see here is that switch B turns into off, but switch A, it remains as on because this is referencing it by value. We're not referencing the same object. That is different to say reference, which is like you're pointing to the same thing. So here we have A, and that equals an object with status as a key and on as the value. So let's create a copy of it by doing let B equals A, right? So A still equals on, but what happens when we modify B? status equals, let's make it off. Well, what you see here is that by modifying B, we're also modifying A to off. That's because we are basically pointing to the same reference, the same object right here. If you don't pay attention to this, this can lead to a lot of bugs. Like in other, like say if you're using React, you might face this a lot. So to solve this, what we need to do is not point to the same object, but create a new copy and point to the copied. So let's do that. We're going to copy again with the spread operator. So everything from A is being copied into C. Let's go down a bit. And then if we print A and C, we have A has the status off, and so does C. They're copies. But let's try to modify C. So C.status, let's make that equal to, I guess, broken. I don't know. And you see here that since C is a copy, it's referencing another object. It's referencing the copied version. So modifying that does not modify A over here. A stays the same, it's still off. And then let me go into the next topic, which will be functions. I think this is the thing I love the most about JavaScript. I'm really into like functional programming. So functions in JavaScript, they're objects, right? They can be used and passed around like objects. So like you can pretend it's like a variable. This function is a variable, and you can, I guess, do anything you can with a variable. You can, I guess, pass this function into another function as a parameter, and you'll see that here with callback functions. But for now, this is how you declare a function. You have the keyword function, you have the name of the function, which is add, parameters, A and B, and then the body. And in this body, we're just returning A plus B. So I'm going to use this function throughout the whole presentation. And by running it, you just run it like a simple function. So add 1, 2, and that returns 3. Now, since functions are objects, you can use them as values, right, in an object. So this object has the key print, and the value equals a function. So say we wanted to make this function, I guess, print hello world. Hello, or just hello, right? Well, how do we run it? Well, we have to call the object, call the function as it were a function, and there we go. We have a function in an object. And then for the next one, this one's a very, I guess it's going to take a while to understand this. It took me a while to understand this, but once you get it, a lot of things, you'll have a lot of aha moments. Like everything will kind of make sense, like especially if you're doing React, Angular, or any other library like say jQuery, because this is constantly being used. So let's start by making callback functions. So we do this by making function, and then as a parameter, we are going to, I guess, make a callback function. We're going to call this one callback function. So this variable is going to be a actual function that we can run in the body. So let's do that. So we're going to console.log. We're going to call the function as if it was a function. And then I guess let's provide variables, say like 10 and 20 to this function, whatever this function is. Now what we're doing here in line 24 is we're calling run, but it's missing our parameter, right? Our function. What we could do is, let me copy this one. We can pass it this add function that we created a while ago. So we do that by just passing it without calling it. So we don't call the function by adding parentheses, because that's going to actually execute the function. Instead, we just give it kind of a copy of it. And so the copy is going to be set here. So callback equals add, and then we're going to call it. And that is why you see 30, because 10 plus 20 is 30. Any questions? Where'd you go? I see you again. All right, let's go to the next concept of this. As I said, functions are just objects, right? We can add them as a value to a key. So what if we wanted to, in this function, print a value that is a part of the object? So in this function, what if I wanted to print the name Bob? Let's try that What if I did name? And then it looks like name is not defined. Well, that is an issue with the scope codes. What's happening here is that this function is looking for the variable name. So it's looking for this variable. But that's not the one we need. We need the one up here, right? And this doesn't exist, right? So how do we call this variable up here? We do that by using the keyword this. So this now refers to this object right here. And then we want to access the key name. So we do this object, and then we want to get the key, and then we get Bob. So this is kind of like, say, copy the object and replace it here. It's like calling customer.name, right? That's going to return what we want, the name. Instead, we do this. So this is going to the object above it, and this now equals this object. But it's now called this. I'm saying this a lot, aren't I? Check YouTube. Okay. And now let's move on to another concept of functions, and that is the arrow functions, right? These are used a lot in JavaScript. You see this a lot in like any functional language, like closure, list, I don't know. They all have it. I think they call it like lambdas. There's also anonymous functions. So anonymous, these are arrow functions, right? What we have here is we have the parameter. So we can have like, I guess, parameter A and B of the function as the input. Then we have this symbol signifying that this is an arrow function, right? What we have here is a function. Then the third one is the body of the function. So like what we can do here is like do anything we could in a function. Let a equals 1, we can console.log a, we can also return a. Anything you can do in a function, you can do here because these are functions. So one way to think about it is like this. Let me add a name. So this is the traditional way. These arrow functions don't really have a name. They're just anonymous. So we get rid of the name. There's no name associated to it. And then this function is replaced or removed. And you instead add the arrow to the right of the parameter. So input, arrow function, body. And if all you're doing is a one-liner thing on this arrow function, if you're just returning immediately, like there's no other code, like say a let a or calling other functions, like if it's just one line, then it's possible to just make a one-liner. So you do that by doing the inputs, a and b, arrow function, and then you kind of state what you want to return. So a plus b. So what I want to return is this function is going to return the addition of a and b. You're kind of inferring that return is there. So you don't really have to type it in. It's just inferred that it's there. And that's a one-liner approach. And let's go back to the original example of the callback function that we had back here somewhere. So what this run function does, we provided a function, and all it's going to do is it's going to call that function with parameters 1 and 2, and then we're going to print the results. So what run requires is a callback function, so let's give it an arrow function, right? And this arrow function is going to need 2 parameters because we use that here. So let's give it a and b. And our arrow function is going to return a plus b. So this function is going to be set equal to this variable, basically. And we're just going to call it and print it. I don't think I print on. A has already been declared. Oh, I have to comment these out. This isn't real code. There we go. So the result is now 3. So what we're doing is we're passing this function to be evaluated and executed inside. And save to result, and we print it. So that is callbacks with arrow functions, which is smaller than creating an actual function. Like one of the benefits of this is like, say you only need this function one time, like you're never going to use this, you're only using it here. That's where you would use an arrow function, because what's the point of creating one right here, right? if it's only used one time. Now, onto the next concept, which I'm just going to review like different ways to create functions. And we have the traditional one where it's function, the name of the function, parameters, and body. We have a second one, which is making this function, since it's an object, equal to a variable. So now you can call this variable as it were if it was a function, right? Then we have the third way, which is using, oops, I'm just going to paste it, using the arrow syntax, right? So this function right here is being set equal into additional 3. So additional 3 is referencing an object, which is a function. And then we have the final one, which can be a one-liner, which you can do sometimes. And all of these do the same thing, they just print a plus b. Now, finally, for the last point, let me check on YouTube real quick. Perfect. What time is it? Okay. Then let's go to the part that I kind of love, right? Let's talk about helper functions. So as I said, arrays are, well, everything is basically an object, right? That includes arrays. Our traditional array, like we view this as elements in a list, right? So we have a list of numbers, but this in JavaScript, it's not a type. It's not like what you see in Java or C or C++. It is an object. So let's try to see like what that looks like in the background. So let's make bank accounts equal an object. And so what does an array object have? It has a value, length, and this is equal to how many elements are in this array. So let's just do 2 for now, even though there's 4, right? And then the actual elements are saved by indexing it with the key. So element 0 is the key, and then the value is whatever you put there. So 1201.65. And then the next one is going to be index 1, and that's 3544.02, right? And you do this again 2 more times for the other 2 indexes. Now, along with having these values, these array objects also contain these helper functions that we can use. One of them is for each, which is a function that requires a callback function. We also have, I say, push, which is a function that requires an item to push to the end of the array. So when we call it, an item is going to be appended to the end. So let's say that. And then we also have pop, which is a void function that just removes the last element when called. And since this is an object, let's say we want to reference this index. Let's do index 1, right? So to reference objects, we do, let me print it. We call the object, and then we do the brackets, right? And then we give it the key. Like, which key do we want? We want the key 1. And that returns index 1. So that is how an array is an object in JavaScript. We're not really referencing it as an array, but as an object. I believe you could probably do the string 1. Yeah, because it's a key, and you could also do this key as 1. JavaScript gets really weird. Now, because of that, we have these helper functions that we can use. So one of these is for each. So if we wanted to iterate through an array, the traditional way of doing it in, say, Java or C, like we've seen in our classes, is using the for loop, right? You have a variable which is initialized at 0, and it goes until we reach to the end of the array's length, right? And then by accessing, we access it like this. So bank accounts index I, and that's going to print every element. Oh, let me comment this out because I'm overwriting. Every element in the array, right, is being printed here. So in JavaScript, we're kind of functional, right? We have functions that help us achieve the same thing, and one of those is for each, like I said. So for each, what it does, it goes through each element, and it like you provided a callback function, and it's going to call that function, and the parameter that goes in that function is each single element. So at one point, we're going to go through each element. So by doing that is like we index, not index, I'm sorry. We call the variable array. We do for each, so we're going to run the for each method on it, and for each requires us to give it a function. So let's give it an arrow function. And what for each is going to do, it's going to get each index or each element and save it as a parameter. So let's call this one, I guess, account. So at one point, account is going to go equal each one of these elements. So let's just print it. What does account get us? Well, account gets us every element in the array, because this for each is going through each element. Now this is functional in the sense that it's immutable. So anything you do to account, it's not going to modify the original array. So if I were to, let's say, modify account equal to 0, let's move this one down here. Right, so we expect it to bank accounts equals to 0, but it's immutable, so it's not really changing any state. So it's still the original state. And that's a functional concept, immutability, of making elements not change, so you can't modify it. This is like a good thing because it stops us from having some bugs, right? It's like, I guess, a good coding practice in functional programming. Now for the next one, we have map and filter. These are other functions that each array object contains. So what map does is it creates a new array, right? And it populates like this new array with the results of calling a function that we give it, the callback function, on each single element. So it's not modifying the original array, it's just creating a new one. So let's do that. So we're going to retrieve a copy of it. Let's make one. Let's say we wanted to get what the account will look like if we added interest to each account, right? So this new variable is going to be bank accounts.map. So we're going to map it. And then we provide an arrow function. And in this arrow function, we have to give it the parameter of, let's say, account. So each element is going to be in account at one point. So we can, to actually get these values out and into this new array right here, we have to return. So I'm going to return accounts, and then I'm going to return it by adding interest. So if we print this, bank accounts with interest, we will see that it is a copy of the array. So let me print the original just so we can see. Oops. We have the copy of the array, which has been modified by adding or multiplying 1.2 to each element. So 1201 is now 1441. And this again is also immutable. It's not changing anything in the original array. Now, another thing that I use all the time in, say, I guess React, is the filter method. So arrays have this filter method, which it creates a new array with only the elements that pass a test that you provided, right? So let's try it. Let's make a variable bank accounts with the bread and make that equal to bank accounts. Oh, bank accounts. We're going to go access the bank account array, and we're going to filter it. Now filter requires a callback function, so let's give it an arrow one. And one of the parameters is the value of each element. So we're going to call it accounts, which it can be anything really. So let's do elements. And then since this is going to look at, it's kind of like an if statement. You're checking the logic. So I'm going to return only the values that element is greater than, let's say, 3000, right? So only those elements will be passed on to this new array that we're making. And we see here that that is true. This filter is going to run this function on each element. And if it passes the test, it's going to return true. And if it's true, that means we are going to add it to our new array, which is 3,544 for our first case, right? There are a lot of more methods that are available for the array class. There's also objects also have their own array. So I guess this objects have, let's say, I guess assign. They also have apply. There. So these objects all contain like these prototype functions that you can use on them, just like arrays have for each. And that is basically what I have. I think I've gone 40 minutes or so. Basically what we went over was the data types allowed in JavaScript. We went over objects, how to create them, their key value pairs. The problem of referencing by value or by reference. We went over functions. We went over this. We went over the arrow syntax, and then over how do we create those functions, and then iterating over an array using functions built into this object. And that's all I have for now. I wanted to get over like manipulating the DOM. So like JavaScript by itself is like what you saw here is just JavaScript, just a language. But what we can do is we can manipulate like HTML pages. I'm not going to go over too much, but you would do that by saying calling the document object and then getting elements like ID. And then let's give it ID goes here or header. So JavaScript is used for manipulating like web pages, right? So this is what it is. It's like you select things on the web page and then you can make it equal to something else. So like say hello world, or you can also like read input. So if a user presses a button, I want you to run a function. Like JavaScript is very powerful, and it's really good language to learn right now, especially because a lot of recruiters are looking for JavaScript, right? There are popular frameworks such as Angular. There's also React. There's Vue, and I think jQuery is still being used. But yeah, I really suggest you learn JavaScript. If you have any more questions, please feel free to ask us in the Discord channel. And that's all I have for now. I am going to go over to the Discord server in a bit. I'm going to end this now, I think. And let's say 20 seconds. Thank you for coming. Oh yeah, yes. Sorry, George. What did you say? Binary functions. I only know how to print hello world. Wait, let me see. Can I understand? I like the question. Actually, you probably can with Scratch. No, I think that was MIT, right? I think MIT is the one that does Scratch. MIT. I love the questions. I don't remember who made Scratch. Do you guys know? Do it later. Bro, when I get a job, I will hire you for that. Thank you for the questions. I am going to go to the Discord now. I'll see you guys later. Thank you.